Hello again. For my developmental case assessment paper, I interviewed a little boy. He was almost 3 years old. He was 34 months old. And I used the 36-month ASQ as I felt that was the most appropriate form to use. During our interview, his mother was present and she helped answer a lot of history and a lot of background information and answered some of the biopsychosocial questions that I had prepared while we were kind of getting settled. We met in a gymnasium, and the little boy was playing an imaginary baseball game whenever I came in, and it was super cute, and I found it pretty fascinating. And so I kind of just watched him play for a little while, and he was throwing the ball to different parts of the gymnasium and then running to what clearly were bases. And when I asked what he was doing, he said, "Baseball game." And it was the cutest thing ever because, well, he's 2, and 2-year-olds are cute. So I watched him do that for a while, and I actually got to see him running and throwing a ball overhanded. It was about the size of it was a wiffle ball, about the size of a softball, but, for toddlers. And he was running back and forth to the bases, and it was, I was able to actually assess quite a few things while he was doing that. And whenever he came over to me, he did not want to do any of the things that I needed him to do. He did not want to sit down and draw. He did not want to string beads. He refused to do anything. So I just watched him do some of the things that he did, and I had to kind of work on the fly and be a little creative. And so I drew a line on a piece of paper with a crown, and I sat a crown and the piece of paper on a table. And then I went over to a countertop and had a piece of yarn and some beads and just sat them there. And a few minutes later, he went over, he was riding a tricycle, and then he was talking to his mom. And a few minutes later, I watched him walk over to the paper and the crown, and he drew a circle next to my circle, and he drew a line next to my line. And then he went and rode the tricycle again for a while. And then I hopped across the gymnasium a few hops, and then I kicked a ball. And he came up right behind me, and he hopped, and he kicked the ball. And whenever I asked him, hey, can you go kick the ball? No! And he turned his head away from me. And anytime I asked him to do anything, he basically had the same response. He said no and turned his head. And it was a little difficult, but I've been around toddlers before, and sometimes this is how this goes. He had just had a full morning of preschool, and it was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, so it was coming up on nap time, and that wasn't real surprising. So I kind of just went with the flow, but I actually did get him to do all the things that I needed him to do. The only thing that we couldn't do was go up and down stairs. And that was really because where we were at, there were no stairs to go up and down. So I asked his mom, if he was able to do that. And apparently this little boy, if the stairs are spread far apart, he will go up 1 foot at a time. But if the stairs are close together, he will actually go 2 feet at a time. So he'll go up with his right foot onto the stair and then bring his left foot up and then go to the next step, which is kind of actually backwards of what I would expect. And I think what we think of whenever we think of normal stair climbing. So that was definitely marked as sometimes, but that wasn't something I was able to actually see him do. He did string the beads. He did draw the papers. He did look at the picture, and that was supposed to be like half of a stick person, and he said it was a dog. And I guess if you turn it sideways, it kind of does look like a dog, but that wasn't the right answer. So anyway, he scored really well. Fine motor, problem solving, and his personal and social development were all above the cutoff. His communication and gross motor development were within the gray area, but considering that he was actually a couple of months younger than what this ASQ was developed for, I kind of don't feel like he has any kind of delays there. They were on the high end of the gray area, and I actually just think that that's because he was a little bit young. However, I did recommend a couple of interventions for just teaching him his last name, which they're actually working on. He just hasn't learned it yet. And to point and name objects like eyes, nose, mouth, things like that. And then balancing on one foot or the other. And I actually think that, he could make that a game where, him and his peers could do that, or him and his mom could do that, and see who could balance for the longest. Little things like that. He is very physically active. I don't think that he had any symptoms of like ADHD type of behavior or hyperactive behavior. He's just a normal, almost 3-year-old boy, and they're pretty physically active for the most part. Socially, he's doing great, which I was really surprised about because he is an only child, and he doesn't have any cousins around the area, or, neighborhood friends that he would play with. He's a little young for that anyway, but being an only child, sometimes they don't socially develop the same way children with siblings do, or children that have cousins that are the same age around. So I was really surprised by that, but he does go to a preschool 2 days a week, and he plays very well. He likes to play with other boys. He likes to play with toys that are typical boy toys, trains, cars, blocks, things like that. He eats everything except for bananas. He gets plenty of nutrition and eats very well balanced meals and snacks. A little bit of fruits, a little bit of vegetables, a little bit of everything. He's up to date on his immunizations. His parents did choose to go ahead and immunize him, and they have a really traditional household in the sense that mom and dad both live there. They have traditional family roles. Mom's more nurturing, dad's a little bit more roughhousing kind of thing. And so that was, it was pretty typical. They have a very positive parenting style. They don't have any family in the area at all, but they are very involved in their church and in the community. They have, friends and things. The one thing about this little boy is that he does not sleep a lot. He definitely does not even come close to the recommended 11 to 12 hours a night. And I did notate that is important for his biophysical development. It's important for his mood, his stress level, his psychological development, all the things. Sleep is just really important. And he might only get 7 hours a night. And he doesn't nap for very long, so he's not making it up there. So that's definitely a concern and something to watch for. I also thought it was really interesting that this generation that he is in is called Generation Alpha, and he will never know a phone that is not a smartphone. He will have technology at his fingertips, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the next decade or two with technology and how that affects social skills, because it can completely eliminate face-to-face interactions, and will be very interesting socially how that works with everything being on the internet and at your fingertips. So I don't know how that will affect social skills and social development and that side of things. Overall, I think that this little boy is on course with his development. He has a very broad range of strengths. I do think that one thing that the family could benefit is to have more family supports, and that will decrease their stress also, and can only benefit the family. So I did also recommend some communication and gross motor interventions, and in my paper. And overall, it was a really great experience. So thank you.